Hello, and welcome to RV Advisors All Things RV Podcast. I am your host, Kathy Conrad. I've been enjoying the RV lifestyle for 5 years, and I love helping new RVers realize their RV dreams. This podcast is about RV education, resources, adventures, and the amazing people who love RVing. It is also about discovering the freedom RVers experience, the connection with nature we are all so grateful for, and how RVing enriches our lives. On this podcast, you can expect us to talk about all things RV, including the good stuff, the challenging stuff, and everything in between. So, join us weekly and enjoy the lineup of guests we have in store for you. Hi, friends, and welcome back to All Things RV Podcast. Today, I have a special guest that I'm very excited to interview, Penny Rose. And I met Penny online through an RV content creators group, and she introduced me to the RV Queens podcast and Kate White's community, which I subsequently joined, and I'm loving it. And now I see Penny every Wednesday for the RV Queens working group, which has been really fun and super productive. Penny is a full-time RVer, she's a CPA, and she has her own business that she has taken on the road with her. And she helps content creators make confident financial decisions. So Penny, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to be here. This is so much fun to have an interaction in a different type of space.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So you're full-time now, but tell us about what was your life like before you went full-time?
My husband and I were living in a traditional house in a traditional city, working traditional jobs. We had been working on becoming debt-free, but we still had a mortgage, and somehow we started watching YouTubers, full-time RV families, and they were showing us how they were transforming their lives.
Wow.
And we got very interested in the possibility that, that we would benefit ourselves by transforming our lives in a similar way.
So had you ever camped or anything before, tent camped?
Yeah, so ever since I met my husband was a camper before we met, and he had all the tent camping gear, so we did that first. And then, like many RVers, we graduated to pop-up camper, and we did that for a number of years. And then we graduated to a different type of travel trailer. It's called a casita, and it was full fiberglass. It's a similar shape to an Airstream. And so then, you didn't have to like crank it up and crank it down and all that. And that's what we had before we actually decided to take the plunge and to go into full-time RVing. And the year that we started thinking, we might be interested in doing something crazy. We're Florida residents. We've lived in Florida for about 21 years. And if anybody hasn't been to Florida state parks, I highly recommend them. They are some of the nicest state parks in the United States. And we booked one camping event every single month for an entire year. And it gave us lots of practice of, like packing it up, going, figuring out, that we don't have to eat special food. We can just take the food that we already have and eat the food that we would have eaten, in our house. And it started the process of us learning that it didn't have to be extra hard. It was something that we could do. And then we went from that casita, we went to the RV that we have today. And we traded in that casita at the dealership and spent New Year's Eve in the parking lot of a major RV dealership that has full hookups in their parking lot specifically for that, so that you could basically do a dry run, on delivery day without, you could test everything. And then if you had any issues, you were still there at the dealership. and we did that, um, at the knowing that COVID was coming, but that was the year that we, bought our RV.
Wow. So you what month in 2020 did you buy your RV? So it was before COVID. So it was oh, you said New Year's Eve you were there. So January. So you bought at a good time.
Yep, so we took delivery December 31st, right before it would have been 2019, I guess.
Wow. That was good timing.
Yeah, had no way of knowing what the timing was like, and we basically other than having to take the RV in for service and going on vacation, we've essentially been in the RV that entire time.
Wow. So did you sell your house?
Yes, we did.
Did you sell
Yeah.
it before you bought your RV then or no?
No. So my husband and I, when we got married, we each had our own house and it was completely filled to the brim with stuff. And then when we got married, we put all the stuff in one house and it took us a long time. Because I don't know if anybody remembers what it was like, but the donation centers stopped taking donations. People stopped being comfortable, going to other people's house to buy things. We did really well. We sold everything that we could possibly sell. eBay, I had like my mother's china, all of those things to go through. And so we moved in, like I said, on December 31st, and we ended up selling our house in November of that following year. So we're still had our house for 11 months. And that worked out fine because we have a dog and we didn't feel comfortable in Jacksonville, Florida, leaving our dog in the RV all day when we were at work. So we went to our house and dropped our dog off as if we had done for all the other years.
Uh-huh.
Our dog spent the day in his kennel like every other day,
Uh-huh.
and it meant we could save money because once we sold our house, we instead of we didn't have a house to take him to, so our dog went to doggy daycare for an entire year.
Wow, that was expensive. But that was like a freaking marathon every day to clean your house out, huh?
Yeah, but what a blessing because I worked for the FBI. My husband and I both worked for the FBI at that time. Prior to COVID, no one, you had to be basically on your deathbed for someone to ever get approved to work from home.
Yeah.
And because of COVID, they allowed us to, we had it was so generous. Only had to go into the office every other week.
Mhm.
So it was 1 week in the office and 1 week out of the office. And the week that we were in the office, my boss was like, just come in the morning, get everything that you need ready, transfer what you need to transfer so that you can keep working on it from home. And so I basically was in the office less than 50%. And so we were home on our own time, basically, be available at home when somebody was coming to pick something up. And, at lunch, we were already there and we could, use that time to kind of multitask and get rid of stuff while we were working from home at the same time.
So what'd you do with your RV during that time? Was it parked on your property? Was it in storage? Was it at a campground? I mean, how'd you do that? Did you live in both places?
No, we lived in our RV and we were stationary in an RV park in a different part of
Oh, I see.
that whole time. So we slept in the RV and then we got ready for work and we put our dog in the car and went to our other house. And it was great because we could shower there and there are multiple showers and the washer and dryer were there. And we still had food in both places and cookware and all that stuff.
That's very cool. It's funny, everybody transitions, a little bit differently. That's really interesting. So, basically, seeing those YouTube videos kind of really enticed you into going to the full-time RV life.
Absolutely.
You're in a fifth wheel, right?
No, we have a travel trailer.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I just assume most people who are full-time, unlike us, go to a fifth wheel because there's so much more storage underneath.
We have the back of our pickup. we have a cap on the pickup, so we wouldn't be able to have that cap if we had a fifth wheel, and that's basically our garage.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that we keep in there, and we wouldn't want my husband is like, I wouldn't wanna give up that space, and so and, we actually don't need I mean, we actually have a lot of space, even in a travel trailer. I mean, we have one slide, and for the longest time, we had enough room to leave our dog's kennel up in the kitchen. And, I just like if I needed to get in a drawer, I just slide it aside and then get out what I want. And then when I was done, I slid it back. And so other than that, we could get around the kennel. We hadn't felt comfortable letting him sleep outside his kennel. And the last 6 months, we've learned that he's okay sleeping out of his kennel, and so we still have it with us all the time, but we don't need to have it up, and so we actually have a little bit more space than we're used to. But we're totally comfortable with the space we have now. We probably could go a little bit smaller.
Really? What's the length of your trailer now?
It's 33 feet.
Yeah, that's pretty good size. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So I know you do move around, right? So
Mhm.
tell me, what does your travel look like? How often do you move around? How long do you stay at each location? And what are the places you like to go?
So we are members of Thousand Trails. So there's 1,000 trails available. We just have the annual pass. So that means that we can stay if we can get reservations. We stay for 2 weeks and then we go somewhere else for 7 days. And then we'll go back into 1,000 trail. So what we do, being I'm a big personal finance geek, so what we like to say is that we use arbitrage, which means we were able to go to really, really nice high-end parks on the 7 days that we're going to have to pay anyway, that we're going to be outside of the system. And then, it gives us, the sense of comfort and ease in being in a really nice park with lots of amenities. And then, we go back and we go into Thousand Trails, and it may not it most more than likely doesn't have all the amenities that we experienced in the other one. So it gives us a really good balance.
Nice.
So we own an RV resort outside of Orlando, Florida, and we spend usually about 3 months at a time there, and then we'll go out for 3 months, and then we'll go back, and so essentially, out of every year, we're traveling for 6 months, split over 2 times, and so the Thousand Trails membership really, dictates, how long we stay in one location. The other alternative is if you're going over a distance, we'll on our 7 days out, we'll go that distance during that time frame, and we'll spend maybe 2 or 3 nights at location intermediate locations on the way from a Thousand Trails location to another one. But my absolute favorite RV park is, just off of I-95, in Savannah, Georgia. It's called Creek Fire, and they have a lazy river, and I go in that lazy river every single night. It is so relaxing, and my husband laughs at me because he said, "You take that lazy part seriously." I just lay in my tube, and if I run into somebody, it's they're in an inner tube too. I'm just make sure I'm not kicking people, but that's one of our favorite places to go, and we make sure that we go there every year.
Fun. How fun. That's very cool. So you said you own a resort outside of Orlando?
Yeah, so we own a lot in an RV
Oh, I
resort.
know. Okay.
Yep,
Okay. That's
yep.
nice.
Yeah, it works out very well because we have neighbors that will get our mail for us. Some mail doesn't go through our mail forwarding service, and so we have somebody who's can look out for us. They'll call us if, they see somebody parking in our driveway that doesn't belong. And then we try to be out from our property January, February, and March,
Mhm.
and we're able to rent it
Nice.
during that time period. And that covers some of the HOA expense that we have all every month all year long.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've been very curious about doing that. I know that they're not super prevalent I haven't dived in it too deeply, but that seems like it would be kind of a nice way to go, that sort of a home,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah, because we're allowed to put any RVI approved vehicle on that lot. And so ultimately, we think what we're going to do is buy an Airstream land yacht, something way too big that we would never, want to take down the road, but take it there and we can put hurricane straps on it so that because we have a huge concrete pad and then we can enjoy the off-grid features of owning, I mean, basically the alternative is most of our neighbors have a park model and it's not going to be set up for off grid like an Airstream would be. So we would have our own, we would still have a water tank so that, one of the big considerations when people think about RVing in Florida is hurricane.
Yeah.
And so, what would you do, with your RV if you didn't have power? Well, people in the park model have a lot bigger footprint. They're going to have to get a lot bigger, generator. They're going to have to figure out how they're going to store water. Whereas an Airstream, we can build it so that we put in really good batteries and we can make sure that all of our systems run off the batteries all the time. And so everybody else's backup plan becomes our main plan, basically.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's great. Yeah, I guess I read something else about hurricane strapping just recently, and it's like, wow, that I'm sure you don't still stay in it if there's a hurricane that just keeps it from. Would you? Do you stay in it if there's a hurricane with it strapped down, or do you go to a location that might be safer?
We just go to a hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've done that even when we lived in a house. I mean, Jacksonville it's very unlikely to get hit by a hurricane just because of the positioning of how it basically cuts into the state. The hurricanes usually go up the ocean and don't have a big effect on it. But now that we're in Orlando, you know, we just pull in the slides and, button everything up and then go to a hotel for, a day or two and then come back and everything's fine.
Oh, that's good. Good. Very cool. So, what do you like most about being full time in RV life?
So, what I love is going to different cities and different states and living there, but being in the same house.
Yeah.
Nobody else gets to do that, unless you have a boat. So,
Yeah.
you pull all the blinds and it's the same house that I was in, in Arizona in January, but I'm in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I know. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was laying in bed when we were in Colorado. It's like blinds are shut. And when I open the blinds tomorrow, I'm in Colorado. It is very cool. What I love too is when you're traveling, your bathroom's behind you. You don't have no more public restrooms. You just have to find a good place to park and you can use your own bathroom. And wherever you stay that night, you're in your own bed with your pets with you, which is really nice. Really nice. So what do you say? What would you say your biggest challenges are that you've encountered since you've been RVing?
Internet. It's pretty
Mm,
common. I'm this close to getting Starlink. My husband and I have cell phones on different carriers. We each of us have a hotspot on our phone. We have additional hotspots on two different carriers. And because I'm a CPA, I would have to use, even if the park internet was really good, I'd have to use a virtual private network in order to work on client work. And most of the systems that I need to use to work online won't work through a virtual private network.
yeah, that's a challenge. I keep two hotspots as well, but I've thought about eventually we may go to Starlink, but that seems to be a common challenge for people who are working on the road, for sure. So what do you have any words of wisdom for anybody who might be contemplating going full time in an RV?
My recommendation is don't waste a lot of time, like, don't waste years figuring it out. Do the best, make good decisions, plan it out. Don't go crazy, but also don't wait. I mean, some of what you have to figure out about what you like is from doing it. And so my biggest advice is do what you can now. And then, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I want to get my last RV first." And it's like, you know, some people are lucky and they're able to do that. But, there's so many variables. And I think you learn the most by making the best decisions that you can with the resources that you have available today.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. Because, yeah, time goes by fast. There's a lot of fun to be had out there, RVing for sure. So tell me, what do you wish that you knew now, that you didn't know then when you were first starting out RVing?
Now, when I hear that question, I normally think that people, it's funny, are they going to answer negative thing? I wish I'd known, this bad thing might happen, or, are they going to answer it like a positive thing? And my answer to that is a positive thing. And just learned this concept called residual results. And I know that we experienced residual results. And it's basically like compound interest from making a good decision.
Mhm.
And it was one of the best decisions we could have ever made was simplifying our life.
Mm.
And we had no idea the results that we would get from that.
Mm.
Most people are like, "Oh yeah, if I simplify my life, these are the three things I'm going to get." But the results that we got were so amazing, nothing we could have ever thought. Things positive things happen to us that would never have happened if we stayed in our house and thought, well, we'll only get these few benefits. So basically, because we simplified, we sold our house, we got rid of all of our stuff, we used that as an opportunity to get fully debt free, and we had a much smaller footprint. We had much fewer things. And as a result, when my husband was offered an early out for his retirement, where he would get a certain amount of money, have the opportunity to retire 5 years early, we had no idea that opportunity would come when we decided to move into our RV. So we would not have been able to take advantage of the early retirement had we not already made all those decisions when we had no idea. And so the impact of, some of the most impactful decisions are the decisions that continue to give you results over time.
Yeah.
Just keep giving. And I didn't know that. I had no way of knowing. And I find that, that type of residual result concept, I find it a lot in my life, and I had never heard of it. But as
Yeah.
soon as I heard it described, and I'm reading a book called, it's called Effortless by Greg McKeown. And
Mhm.
that, I believe that was the first time I've heard that idea. I genuinely think that describes what I didn't know. But I think if you're aware of it, that you can make a really good decision, and these amazing things, benefits will come to you that you can't even imagine today. I think that is something that I wish I had known, and I wish other people
Yeah.
understood that as they're deciding to go into this lifestyle.
No, we experienced the same thing, but I mean, our decisions were all pretty calculated, and we kind of knew where we wanted to go. But yeah, less expenses, no more weekly housekeeper because I worked, 50 hours a week, less bills. So your
Mhm,
expenses go way down. And that freed us up to move states
mhm,
like in a flash. So when my husband got an offer in Idaho, boom, we could just go. We didn't have to sell our house. We didn't, it made it really simple and fast. It lightens you up so much
mhm.
to take advantage of those opportunities. It really does. So it's very cool. So, how is it running your business? You're a CPA,
Mhm.
you're running your business, you're an entrepreneur working remotely. Tell me about that and how you like that.
So I always thought I would like it, but until when I was working for the FBI, until they gave me an opportunity to work from home with my regular job, I had no idea I was going to like it as much as I did. And when I only had those privileges for about 6 months, and 6 months was long enough to know that I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I went back to the office and I said, okay, here we have this opportunity to apply to, continue to work from home. And they said it, and I gave them, I did a whole, I'm an accountant and an economist, and I presented this whole case about how I was an investigator for the FBI. So I gave them all the evidence that showed how much more productive I was because I'm Chatty Cathy. I don't know if you've ever heard that. We're in RV Queen's pod together, and you can ask me one question, and 20 minutes later, I'm still like starting to wind up my point. Well, I'm not the best person to work in an office full of my friends.
Yeah.
And so I presented them this case about how, being at home by myself, I got 4 years worth of work backlog done in 6 months of working from home. And I was denied any working at home privileges at all. And my husband was already in the process of going through his early retirement. And immediately upon learning that I wasn't going to be able to work from home, I started working on my business, developing a business that I knew would give me the same amount of money as what I'll get when my pension starts. And so I started learning how to run a business myself, and I did it on the side, and that gave me a lot of confidence to know that my systems were working. And so once I left my job, it and everything that I hoped it was. I used to work when I worked in the office, I would work from 7:15 to 4, and had a lunch hour. And after I worked from home, a lunch hour seemed like such a waste of time. It was ridiculous. And, like commuting to and from work was such a waste of time. And so one of the things that I had to learn to do working for myself was, I probably should like close my laptop for 15 minutes at lunch. I probably don't need to work through my lunch, even though I could. But it also means that I can, while we're in Florida at the RV resort, they have events Monday through Friday. They have water aerobics twice a week and chair yoga 3 times a week. And I get a really good start on my day and then take a break and then go and do my workout and then come back. And I'm loving it. Basically, one of my coaches describes herself as being unemployable. Basically, I couldn't go back to like having to appear at my desk at 7:15 and stay there until 4 every day.
I know. Don't you wonder how you did all that stuff before?
It was just grind. Just
Well,
grind, grind, grind.
you're on a hamster wheel. Constant. I think about that same thing. I'd be at the gym at 5:15. I'd work out this 5 mornings a week. Work out, come home, juice from fresh juice, vegetable juice, and shower and pack up the dogs because I worked in a dog-friendly office. Packed up 3 dogs and drove, 40 minutes to work. Worked all day, packed them back up, drove home. I did listen to a lot of audiobooks. It's like, how the heck did I do that? How did I do that? And it's just so nice to be off that hamster wheel
Mhm.
and have a more flexible schedule and balanced life. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. That's really awesome.
Thanks.
So when you're an investigator for the FBI, what did you do? Exactly.
So I was a forensic accountant, and most people are familiar with the idea of forensic. And I had a part-time job with the FBI as well in evidence collection, which was totally separate. So a forensic accountant means that I conduct a financial investigation on a subject's bank activity, and then I go into court and testify as an expert witness for the United States government and explain where all the money came from and where all the money went. And I did that for 20 years. And the FBI doesn't have, if anybody's familiar watching crime scene shows, the CSI people, right? That's all they do. They work crime scenes, and that's their full-time job. The FBI doesn't have people that do that full time in the field. They have people at headquarters doing that, directing all of us in the field. So I volunteered to be on the FBI's evidence response team, where responded to crime scenes and helped collect and preserve evidence, which was eventually transported to the FBI.
Interesting. So that was a lot of numbers and then something very different than that. That's pretty cool. Is there anything else you want to share as far as your business goes? Fee fi fo fum financial services, right? Tell us, is there anything else you want to share about your business and maybe what your target market is and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Mostly serve digital creators, and it's an amazing time to be a business owner. There's so many different ways that people are digital creators, and what that means to me is that I am digital creator as opposed to digital like a physical product seller. So I do not specialize in like a Shopify store where people have inventory and that type of thing. I have a full service, traditional CPA services program, but I'm expanding in two areas, one on either side of traditional service. And one of them may apply to some of your listeners in that I have a ultimate checklist that will be in the show notes that you can sign up to get. And it's how to get your business started off on the right foot. And it's a checklist that goes through all the things that you need to know about being a new business owner. If that's what you need to do in order to become a full-time RVer is to start a business. It's easier to get your business set up right in the beginning, get it all set up, than it is for things to go wildly, unexpectedly, amazingly profitable, and then have to go back and try to figure out how to put all these systems in place. It's easier just to put those systems in place and be ready for the success that you're going to.
Yes.
And then on the other end, the top end of what I'm doing is I help moms use their business to build a financial legacy for their children by hiring their children to work in their business.
That's very interesting. So tell me a little more about that. So how does that work? What's
So,
the
uh,
age uh, range?
so there is an amazing IRS court ruling that allows for parents to hire their own children 7 years before their children could go work for a grocery store or something like that. So most people think that, that most people will come to me and say, well, my child is only 8 or 9. They're not old enough to work. And it's like, no, you don't understand. If you have the business, the IRS allows you to hire your child as long as the business is solely owned by the parents. You are allowed to hire your child at age 7, which means that your child will have earned as a 7-year-old. And having earned income allows your child to contribute to a Roth IRA. If you are lucky enough to be able to pay your child enough to contribute to a Roth IRA from age 7 to age 17, they'll have about $130,000 in an account by the time they are old enough to go to college. And most people say, why would my child want to put money into a Roth IRA? That's just for retirement, right? But it's not. Your child can use it to pay for college, and your child can also withdraw some of the money to buy their first home.
Wow. Gosh, well, I didn't know that. I'm sure that most people do not know that. Wow, that's interesting. So, what's the best way for people to find you or reach out to you? I'll make sure we put everything you want to also in the show notes. People can look below and see and have access to all that information as well.
So the best thing to do is to send me an email and I'll respond to that and get you hooked up with the thing that you're most interested in.
Okay, and then the checklist you were talking about.
Yeah. So in the show notes, there'll be a link directly to sign up to get that delivered to you.
Okay, that's awesome. Great. Wow. That's some great gold nuggets right there people can take advantage of. Especially, there's so many more families RVing. There are
Mhm.
also entrepreneurs that are
Mm.
homeschooling kids. So how I'm just so curious about that. So what kind of things would you have your younger child do for your business?
So I love that question. And this started because I was at a conference called FinCon, and I met a woman who has a podcast called Investor Mom. And she said, "You're a CPA. Do you know my moms want to know how they can put money in a Roth IRA for their child? Do you know how to do that?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And so I was on her podcast and I laid it out, and I did some extra research getting ready for it. And I didn't find a lot of explanations about what people had their children do. So what I've been doing is I do a ton of speed networking, like through Zoom, like this, where you get paired with people, and that's all I talk about with them is moms hiring their children. And I also, when I'm not doing speed networking, I also have a webinar that I give. And that's one of the questions that I include in the webinar. And I ask the moms, what can you think your child might do for your business? And it's been amazing. Like Kim from Choosing Your First RV, she and her husband had a food truck. And she said, "Well, we loved having our daughter work the window." So she took money from people, and it was a donut truck. So she said, we didn't think it was a good idea to have our daughter making donuts, running the hot oil. They really felt like their sales, I mean, they were able to track things, and their sales were so much better when their daughter was out front.
Wow.
And then I interviewed a woman who's she's a book agent. Like she's an agent for authors who want to get their book. Majority of her authors that she worked with are in a foreign language, and they work with her to get their books translated into English and then into the book distribution system. And I was in a networking session with her, and I talked about what I did, and she's like, "Oh, I hired my daughter. I'd love to talk to you about that." So she hired her daughter starting at age 6, and she started out having foreign language children's books translated. And then she had her child read it, and her child said, "Oh, this doesn't make sense." And they would go back and redo it. And then she would read it and she'd like, "Yep, it's good." And then and then the book would get published in English.
So she was
And she
essentially an editor for her mom.
Yep,
Wow.
and she did that all the way through till she was probably 24 years old. And there were so many examples, like so many times when instead of me thinking, because I'm not a parent, instead of me spending a lot of time thinking, well, they could do this or they could do that, I just asked the moms who've hired their kids, what you do. I was in another networking, I was in a room with 4 ladies, and the woman said, "Oh, I hired my daughter." And I said, "Hey, can we book a 15-minute coffee chat and talk about it?" And I said, "May I record this so that I can use this?" And she was very open to that, and her daughter does all of her social media.
Wow.
And I think parents understand that their children are so capable of doing so many things, and
Well, they're
I
learning a work ethic through all of it. What great life lessons.
and how to handle money because, I'd rather make an error with a small amount of money than with a big amount of money. And, if you're paying your child, you could pay your child up to the standard deduction for a single individual every year without your child having to pay any tax at all. And so currently that's, I don't know, say like $14,000 this year. And the Roth IRA amount is like $7,000. So they're going to set aside $7,000. You're going to make sure that that happens. And then they have another $7,000 to start to learn how to spend money and how to save money, how to invest, how to make, how to tithe if you're, uh, religiously minded, and much better to, for them to have the opportunity to make decisions with $7,000 a year, as opposed to waiting until they graduate from college and they go out and get a $40,000 a year job, and not having had the opportunity to learn how to experience things in, fail in small amounts before they get these very large amounts. And the other thing that I never even thought of is, it so many family businesses don't go to the third generation. The grandparents started the company, the parents took over, and usually the children go off on their own and do something completely differently. But if they had an opportunity to work in the company while they were young, they could continue to run this three generation legacy.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, just the skills that they learn from the work ethic to money management. A lot of kids don't get that. They don't get to have that opportunity and they learn it later in life. Like you said, bigger mistakes. So that's amazing. Thanks for sharing all that. Very
You're
interesting.
welcome. I get very excited if you
Yeah,
couldn't tell.
that's very cool. Now, if I could just find a way that my dogs could work for me since my kids are grown. So I'll make sure that I put all that information in the show notes for people who might like to reach out to you, learn more. That's really fascinating. I so appreciate you coming on today, Penny. It's been so fun chatting with you and really a big learning experience as well. So,
Thank you so much. I've loved this opportunity, and I would love it. I would love to have a listener reach out to me and have a quick chat to see if there's anything that I can do to be of service to them.
yes, absolutely. You would be the person to reach out to. Absolutely. I had no idea that was even a possibility, and I'll bet you most people don't. So that's a very, very cool niche that you've got going there. I love it. I love it. So, well, thank you again for coming on, Penny. I really appreciate you. I think this is great information for my listeners. Definitely.
Thank you. This has been great.
Good. Glad to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in today to RV Advisors All Things RV Podcast. Please join us again next week for more RV education, resources, adventures, and interesting people. Until then, wishing you amazing adventures, safe travels, and I hope to see you on the road.